Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight is not Luca. Luca has a previous engagement going on, so I am joined by Stokes. Stokes has been with us many a times as that third man on this show. He was with us on our draft night. Stokes, how's it going tonight?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's Sunday. I'm not excited to go back to work tomorrow, but it is what it is.
Yeah, case of the Mondays is definitely the Sunday scaries creeping up on you. I'm not seeing my video working too well on the old YouTube. Am I standing still for you right now
Yeah.
as we talk? Okay, good. So if you're watching on YouTube, we hope it cleans up. But if not, we still have the audio version of this as we can sort through it. So here's what we have planned for you guys on this week's episode. It's been a minute since we have posted some Bills chat stuff. There's been some stuff going on. And then honestly, since the draft and really since our roster reset episode after the draft, there hasn't been too much to talk about. But now that we're after June 1st, OTAs are in the rearview mirror. We kind of have an idea what this training camp roster is going to look like. We want to take the next couple episodes and really dive into these position groups and talk about what our comfort level is with these position groups. How confident are we? And the Bills right now, per over the cap, have about $10 million in cap space that if they decided they wanted to make a move, they could use that money to do that. That money opened up with the Tre'Davious White June 1st salary finally coming off the books. So, Stokes, tonight we are going to focus on the offensive side of the football. On the next episode, we will get all into the defensive personnel. But broadly speaking, Stokes, I do think the more significant losses of this team when it comes to name value were on the defensive side of the ball when you talk about Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, and guys like that. But I think when you talk about guys playing at their peak and maybe the best player to leave this team, it has to start with Stephon Diggs. And then you talk about Gabe Davis, you talk about Mitch Morse, they traded away Ryan Bates. There's some work to do on this side of the ball. They've had a draft, they've had free agency. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of each position group, what is your overall confidence level right now in this Bills offense?
Um, in the offense, I would say that I am still in wait to see mode, because we have so many different pieces that can be an effective weapon any given Sunday, any given day. That it's difficult to pinpoint just how we think this offense is going to work, and that could be a good thing just based on what we know about football in general. Is like if you have more ways to attack a team, it can make you a better offense. But at the same time, you don't have these guys that are essentially completely proven uh, weapons. So it's still a wait to see that. It's exciting to think about what this offense can be, but because we don't know, there's still that unknown that there is a realm of possibility where this offense is just average and Josh Allen's just trying to carry a bunch of not good players to something that can resemble a decent offense. So that's a possibility, or it's possible that the offense is relatively unstoppable because you can't key on one person.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge when we get down to the position groups, like especially wide receiver, where it really is more of a paint by numbers game versus a hey, there's this ultra mega stud at the top, but we know who's going to get the ball. Let's start with that quarterback position, Stokes, because I do think any path to this offense, and quite frankly, this team being great, has a lot to do with that quarterback position. And for the Buffalo Bills, they did swap out backup quarterbacks this year. Kyle Allen is gone. And an old friend, Mitch Trubisky, is back in the building as the Bills brought him back in to be that quarterback too. But we know how this goes. It's the Josh Allen show in Buffalo. This team will go as far as he takes them. And even when he does well in those games, they have a tendency to hold him back, particularly against the Chiefs. We've now seen that happen multiple times where Josh Allen plays fantastic football and the Bills find a way to still lose to the Chiefs. What is your confidence level in this quarterback room, Stokes? Are you at a point with Josh Allen where you don't even really care who the backup quarterback is? Because if Josh Allen misses significant time, it's a wrap anyway? Or are you still kind of like, at least give me somebody competent because if we're talking about 2 or 3 games, maybe he can keep the team above water?
Yeah, I'm more so in the latter. It's like, hey, if Josh Allen has a little nick and he's got to sit out for 2 or 3 weeks or a month, then we need a guy that can go 2-2 or just steady the ship for a couple games. And Mitch Trubisky, he has a lot of experience either starting or being in this position, and he's comfortable in Buffalo. So having played in Chicago, you don't think that the weather would bother him if he has to play later on in the year. So you got a guy that you're not expecting him to do anything special. Just keep the train rolling, and you're also not looking at a guy who thinks he's going to be the man if he has a good few weeks. So I think he's a guy that understands his role and he's comfortable in it, and that's what you want out of a backup quarterback is a guy that hey he's going to steady the ship, he's going to be okay, and whenever the starter's back, he will slot right back into that.
It's funny because last time Trubisky was here in 2020, it felt like a bargain for the Bills. It felt like this was a guy that you could put in the conversation as a top 32 quarterback in the sport. He had come off a disappointing end in Chicago, but it wasn't like he was an all-out bust. It was just, okay, we spent a top 5 pick on you. We drafted you ahead of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. This isn't working out. But he wasn't terrible. And then I think it was a little surprising that he had to go take a job with the Bills where he was just slated as a backup with no path to even compete for a job. Spent 1 year in Buffalo to kind of reset his career. And then the next 2 years in Pittsburgh, I do think gave us a little more clarity on who Mitch Trubisky is. He could not beat out Kenny Pickett, who already is gone from Pittsburgh. He could not beat out Mason Rudolph when they had to give up on Kenny Pickett. So at this point in time, Stokes, I'm with you. I think Mitch Trubisky is the type of quarterback that can keep the team on the rails. But he does bring some of the same mobility that Josh Allen has. He's played in a couple playoff games for whatever that's worth. And I do think that as far as backup quarterbacks go, he's probably fine. If Josh Allen has to miss a game or two, spoiler alert, I don't think Josh Allen's ever going to just miss a game or two. 2 years ago, Stokes, we saw this guy play through an elbow injury that people thought should have taken a month or two off of his season, and he played through it. I feel like Josh Allen at this point in his career is either going to miss the rest of the season because the injury is that bad, or he's just going to play through it. That's kind of where my head's at. But as far as it goes, he checks a lot of boxes, and he's a Josh Allen golfing buddy, which I know you can appreciate. I'm going to take my glasses off because the glare from the light is driving me insane. Let's move on to a position that's near and dear to your heart, Stokes. Running back. Yes. The Bills had a Pro Bowl running back on their roster last year with James Cook. And then they also, in the draft, spent a 4th-round pick on Mr. Ray Davis. And they bring back Ty Johnson, who was a late offseason addition last year, who really came in and had some big moments for the Bills, really thinking about that Dallas Cowboys game. He had some long touchdown runs, long catch and runs. And then they have Frank Gore Jr. and Darrington Evans rounding out the position. And then we'll go ahead and throw Reggie Gilliam in here as that fullback tight end hybrid. I think we all feel good about him. But really, let's talk about the big three. Latavius Murray is gone. Damian Harris never really amounted to much. His season came to an end pretty quickly back in 2023. What do you think about the trio of James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis, and how insulated are they behind James Cook if he has to miss time?
I like this position group because you have guys that it seems like they all fit differently. So you have Ray Davis, who is more of the pounding type of running back, and I think that type of player is one that you need when you have a guy that's he's more elusive. In James Cook, he's more elusive, and he tries to make people miss, and he is super duper quick in doing so. But you got a guy that's going to play more so of like the not necessarily the Derrick Henry type of role, but the guy that's going to wear defenses down, and eventually they're gonna not be able to tackle him, and then he's gonna break a long run. And then you have a guy like Ty Johnson, who seems he's got the quickness and the speed, but you also see instances of where he's powering through tackles. So you have 3 different types of running backs that can all fit, and they're all looking to do something important for the team, and it doesn't look like any, or rather, it doesn't seem like they want or need to be the actually workhorse, and that's the type of thing that I feel that you need when you're dealing with the running back by committee, because this is not that's what the NFL is now.
I think they're going to ask a lot of James Cook, and I think we even saw hints of that when Joe Brady took over. You really saw that's when Ty Johnson became such a big part of the offense. Is Joe Brady seems to really prioritize those running backs who can catch the ball, and we know Ray Davis caught the ball very well at Kentucky. It is going to be curious to see who kind of evolves as that pass protector of the group, because that hasn't been a strength of James Cook's. It wasn't necessarily a strength of Ray Davis's when he was in college, and it's not something Ty Johnson is necessarily known for. So maybe that is a path to the roster for someone like a Darrington Evans or a Frank Gore Jr. if they really want to force the Bills' hand and force them to keep 4 tailbacks, something they have not done under Sean McDermott since really, I think, his first year when they had McCoy and Chris Ivory and guys like that. I don't even remember if they kept 4 at that point in time either. But that would be kind of surprising. Do you feel like this group needs anything else? We mentioned they have about $10 million in cap space. Do you feel okay with where it's at? Is there something else you'd like to see added? Or do you feel like as constructed right now with the 3 we mentioned, with Evans and Gore kind of on the outside looking in, and then Gilliam filling in as kind of that Swiss Army knife on offense, that they're in good shape?
Yeah, I don't see anything. I don't see anything that would make a lot of sense to add, especially to spend cap space on, because it seems like they got most of it covered. You mentioned pass protection, and that's important because we have a commodity like Josh Allen that we don't want anything to happen to. But like it's. I also don't think that it is necessary to go out and get someone like that. Now we got Leonard Fournette, who was known for being a really good pass protector, and he didn't play as much as we thought he was going to play as the season progressed. So, like, while pass pro as a running back is important, we had a guy that fit that mold, and he didn't get the opportunity to be out there that much. So, I feel like that either way, that this is going to be James Cook's 60-65% of the snaps. That's just what he's going to be doing no matter what. So I think it would be. I don't think it would be a good use of the cap to add another running back when it just doesn't seem like it's necessary.
I'm with you, and I'm intrigued by Ray Davis. I've been looking more into him since the draft, watching more of him, and I do think that there's a chance that I think he has a chance to be what they thought they were getting in Zach Moss. Now, Zach Moss ended up going to Indy and kind of turning his career around, and now he's thought of as like a starting level running back in this league. I think Ray Davis has a chance to be that, and it will be interesting if James Cook can't get over some of these drops he has in the passing game or doesn't take another step in pass protection, if Ray Davis can even eat into some of his time. So we shall see. I'm with you. I think they're in good shape with this group, and I don't need them to go out there and do anything aggressively. It's running back. We've seen it time and time again. You don't need to be aggressive at this position. Generally speaking, even if you lose a guy, even a top guy like James Cook, you generally don't have to look too hard to find somebody to at least give you baseline level production.
One thing that I find that I think is fascinating is, like, how high did Ray Davis had to be on their board for them to draft a 24-year-old running back? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he's age-wise, and with running back in the wear and tear, like, he had to have been so much higher than how they valued for them to consider that, because they had been known for drafting a lot of youth and letting them grow into the type of player that they're going to build them to be. So they went and got a 24-year-old running back, and so I'm curious to see the scout that stood on the table, like, hey, you got to do it. Like, this is going to be a guy, and hopefully, if that happened, that guy is correct.
When you draft a 24-year-old, you almost already feel like it's a one contract player. And he's going to be 25 when the season ends. Yeah. And then when you talk about running back, I think that's where it makes sense in my head, because when I saw it, I was like, wow, the 24 turning 25-year-old running back, that's our move in the fourth round. But if you look at running back, like I think a lot of teams are starting to view it, especially when you're talking about a fourth round draft pick. I don't think there's any designs on adding this guy to a second deal anyway. I mean, what are the two different scenarios? Ray Davis turns into a star. That's the pie in the sky, best case scenario for the Bills. And he's one of the best running backs in the league 4 years from now. Well, do the Bills want to be the team that's handing out Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey money? No, that you just don't. And so I think that's where you can kind of compartmentalize that in your brain. And then the other path of it is Ray Davis just is kind of a guy, maybe like a Devin Singletary, maybe like a Zach Moss, where that's a bad comparison because Singletary was better than Moss, but just kind of like a guy, not necessarily a great running back, but you feel okay about him. Well, then you let him go test the waters of free agency, and then he'll either come back to you on a cheap deal or he'll go somewhere else. You get a compensatory pick and you draft the next Ray Davis, who's hopefully a little bit younger. But I'm with you. They must really like him. And it'll be curious to see what happens there, because I expect him to get a lot of work this year, and he better, because he's getting up there in age.
Yeah.
All right, Stokes, let's talk about the position that I think is the first position that comes to mind for almost every Bills fan, Bills analyst out there when it comes to being concerned about this team. And it's wide receiver. And it's wild to me that in a year where the Bills have Josh Allen, they are still considered in their Super Bowl window because they have Josh Allen. They have one wide receiver on their entire roster, Stokes, who has caught a regular season pass from Josh Allen, and it's Khalil Shakir. Not one other receiver has caught a pass from Josh Allen. A lot was made of Stephon Diggs leaving. We did episodes on Stephon Diggs leaving. We can get into that. We certainly can here. They also lost Gabe Davis. They also lost Deontay Hardy. So they also lost Trent Sherfield, who was playing significant snaps for them, for better or worse, in a playoff game. So if you want to get technical about it, I think Andy Isabella, did he catch a pass last year? He's still he's kind of on the futures deal. So if you want to say that he caught a pass from Josh Allen, fine. I don't even remember if he caught a pass last year. I know he was active for a couple games, but you get the larger point.
Yeah.
When I look at this group, Stokes, this is where I struggle, because I think to myself, well, yeah, go at a guy. You need a guy. Go at a guy. But this is where I'm at. I don't see the Bills being a team, despite the fact that they have $10 million in salary cap space right now, according to Over the Cap, to be the team that's going to go out there and blow the Niners away for a deal for Brandon Ayuk. I would certainly be in favor of it. I think Brandon Ayuk would be a wonderful piece to add to the top of this depth chart and would look great in blue and red come the fall. I just don't anticipate that happening. Neither do I think that's going to happen for T. Higgins. So when you kind of cross those two names off the list, what does add a guy mean that is going to bring something that's not already present in this group? Do you want a young guy with upside? Check. Keon Coleman. Do you want a guy that's been in the league for a couple years that kind of just recently started to ascend? Check. Khalil Shakir. Do you want a deep threat? Check. MVS. You also have KJ Hamler, who's coming off of a pretty significant injury. Do you want a guy that's a big body that can go up and get a jump ball? Hey, Chase Claypool's in the house. Do you want a guy that can just kind of be that Deebo Samuel, get the ball to him in space and see what he can do? Check. Curtis Samuel's in the house. I think if you go out, Stokes, and you just add a guy for the sake of adding a guy, you're making what you already have more confusing. You're just taking reps away in camp. I don't see a move out there absent a Brandon Ayuk or a T. Higgins, which I don't anticipate, that helps this group. I think the group itself just needs to sort out who the best 5 or 6 guys are, and let's just go play the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a bunch of different weapons, different knives in the arsenal. But at the same time, it leads us to questions like this going into it. We don't know what it's going to look like. So I think it would be great, and I imagine as the preseason goes on, they're going to talk about that as being a benefit to them. The fact that they have so many different people who can impact the game and impact the game well. So I think that having a bunch of different types of players who can affect the game in different ways is going to help Josh Allen, I think, and to not have that what he thinks or what could have been perceived as, hey, he's in trouble, so he's going to throw at Stephon Diggs and just see what happens, or he's not going to feel like he has to get 10, 11 targets to this one player. He gets the opportunity to just take what the defense gives him and attack it that way. That's what I assume will be how it's explained or talked about going into it, and then, but it will be worrisome for us as fans to figure out, hey, who's going to get the ball on this 3rd and 8? Who is going to be the one that's going to make these big plays? Who's Josh going to trust? So that's where it can get worrisome for us as fans. But when you think about how it might work in a practical matter, that could turn out to be very well.
We're looking at a situation where I think most of us project Josh Allen to probably get 4,500 passing yards, barring injury. That's kind of where he's been. And yet maybe no receiver on the entire team over 1,000 yards. Like, is that how much they're going to spread the ball around? Because you have the receivers we talked about. And I do think, Stokes, if we're just focusing on receiver, and the larger point I was going to make is James Cook's going to catch the ball. You're going to have the 2 tight ends and Knox Kincaid getting involved. So there's going to be other guys on the offense that get involved. But I do think there are a big 3 to this group. I do think you can write in ink that Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir are making this team. After that, I think it gets a little bit murky. I would feel very good about sitting here today saying that I think Mac Hollins would have to have a really bad training camp to get to the roster bubble conversation. I think they like his leadership. I think they like his special teams ability. He, to me, just checks a lot of boxes of a guy that they like in that room, maybe not projecting him as the 4th wide receiver on the team, but somebody that I think is going to be hard to knock off that spot. Do you have a guy of the remaining mix, whether it's Chase Claypool, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Justin Shorter, if you want him, Andy Isabella, KJ Hamler, or even some younger guys like Tyrell Shavers or Brian Thompson? Is there a guy to you that you're going to be watching extra closely in training camp, or that you really hope like the light bulb comes on? Is there 1 or 2 that you're really pulling for?
I think as a fan, we want to pull for Justin Shorter, because when the draft ended last year, and we were doing what we do as fans and just watching all the highlights of all the players that the Bills drafted, and we saw like how Justin Shorter looks like physically and how he plays, it's like, there could be something there. And we would hope that would be the guy that is going to take a step or a leap going into this next year. But I think that for what we're looking for, I would expect it to be MVS, because like no matter what, like when he was on the Chiefs, no matter what, there was once or twice a game where he got behind the defense, and everyone knows, hey, MVS is on the field. He runs go routes, he runs post routes, and he's really fast. But yet, no matter what, you see once or twice a game, he's behind everybody, even though that's what he is known for. And that's the type of thing that I think would be beneficial for this offense, and having that guy that defenses have to either account for or risk getting blown over the top of. So when we have those types of players, or we have that option on offense, that could be great, although his hands are historically questionable. It's a nice option to have. So although I want it to be Justin Shorter, my expectation is that MVS is going to make this team.
I'm with you. And I will say this, and I'm not trying to sound like a homer. Hopefully, if you've taken in Bill's chat long enough, you know that we're not really homers. We criticize the team quite often on this show. I said prior to the offseason, all due respect to Gabe Davis, who I think was missed in that playoff game against the Chiefs. I did not want to pay Gabe Davis market value for a wide receiver his age that has put up the statistics he's put up in the league, because I thought that could be a fool's gold contract for what I think his role is, which is essentially the deep threat on this team. And if you told me going into the offseason they're going to replace Gabe Davis with Marquez Valdez-Scantling on essentially a vet minimum deal with a bunch of incentives built in, I would have signed for that in blood. Like, I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is very good at this one role. I know there's highlight after highlight of him dropping passes, and I get it, but the speed, the pressure he puts on the defenses, I do think it's real. I know there was some momentum early this offseason for KJ Hamler. He was an exciting player at one point in time. I think there's a reason why he's bounced around from several teams since his devastating injury. I would like to see Justin Shorter come through, Stokes. My optimism level on him at this point is about as close to zero as it gets. I really think of the young guys, Tyrell Shavers is the one I'm watching closely because the way that they say he's transformed his body this offseason, the way he's been working hard. I don't see a special player or even a guy in Justin Shorter, but there's a name that, okay, OTAs you have to take with a grain of salt. Chase Claypool, by a lot of accounts, was the most consistent Bills wide receiver of the entire group at OTAs. The entire group. So that includes Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir. There was a point in time, Stokes, a very brief point in time early in his career where Chase Claypool looked like he was on the verge of becoming a star. And then you started to see some attitude get mixed in. And I'm of the mindset where, like, okay, if Mike Tomlin gives up on you, like, we've seen Mike Tomlin deal with some real head cases. So if Mike Tomlin's like, enough, like, that to me is enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm good. But the talent is there somewhere. And it's got to be human nature for a player like Chase Claypool, who was a day 2 pick, who came in, had some flashes, and looked like he was well on his way to getting that second contract that a guy like Gabe Davis ended up getting, life-changing money. And now he is heading into a training camp that will probably decide whether or not he's going to continue to play professional football beyond 2024. If you're ever going to get the best version of Chase Claypool, maybe that version never doesn't exist ever again, Stokes. If you're ever going to get it, this might be the spot for it.
Yeah, I can see it, and he is still of an age that he can still blossom. He can still find that gear. It feels like he's been in the NFL, maybe because he's just been on the mind as far as like going with attitude stuff. But he's only 25 years old. He's right. A year older than Ray Davis. So like he could still have a future in the NFL, and like if that's what we get, if that's the type of player we can get, just a little glimpse of what he was in his first couple years in Pittsburgh, that would be awesome, because he does have physical gifts and the ability to make plays that you may not see in the rest of the wide receiver group. So if that would be a great situation, great amount of gold to find in such a low risk, and that'd be really awesome. And I'm hoping for it too. So yeah.
And for those of you that play Madden, the guy you want is MVS. Just to throw it out there. He's like, what, 99 speed in Madden, 96, 95 speed, something like that.
95, so. I think.
And then before we get off wide receiver, what do you think year one's going to look like for Keon Coleman? I think there's a wide range of opinions. I think you could be of the school of thought of, hey, the Bills really have nobody. He could lead the team in targets this year. Or you could think, well, Dalton Kincaid is the most blue chip player they have. We haven't even talked about tight end yet. You know, Knox is going to catch his. They did give a decent chunk of money to Curtis Samuel. Khalil Shakir had more production than Stephon Diggs after Joe Brady took over last year. I think there's a path where Keon Coleman gets kind of lost in the shuffle year one. Plus, he's not really a fully refined prospect just yet. He's a very young player. Where do you fall on what year one could look like for Keon Coleman?
My expectation of year one for Keon is that I think that my low bar is like 85 targets. That's where I see it over the course of the season. They're gonna try to get him the ball. They're gonna try and put him in advantageous positions and just see how he's able to react to it, and if he's able to take similar to the way that they brought along Dalton Kincaid last year. They tried to work him in. They built packages for him, and they worked him in. And then eventually, when Dawson Knox was out, it was like, well, Dalton, here's your opportunity. And I could see that being the situation with Keon Coleman, where he has a 4 or 5 game stretch where he's getting 8, 9, 10 targets a game, and he's doing something with it. And I also could see, as you mentioned, he's phased out because now all of a sudden Khalil Shakir is taking a step. Now all of a sudden Chase Claypool is now an important player, and MVS is okay. And then we have the way that we're working with the tight ends and James Hook. So it could be a situation where he could be an impactful player, but he's only impactful. He's getting 6 targets a game or 5 targets a game, but they're still impact targets. He's just not getting a lot of them.
All right, Stokes, you're a betting guy. Last question about receivers. Who's going to lead this group in receptions this year? Receptions, yardage, however you want to spill it out. Who's the most productive receiver for the Bills in 2024?
My expectation is that it is going to be Khalil Shakir. I think that he will have the most snaps, and therefore he'll lead them in reception slash yards, just because he's going to be on the field more, because he can do a little bit more. So that would be my expectation, and then followed by Keon Coleman.
So I would love it to be Keon Coleman. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I would be very happy if it was Khalil Shakir. I can't shake this Curtis Samuel feeling. Joe Brady had him in Carolina. They targeted him in free agency. They gave him a pretty healthy contract. And I think he's a guy that they envision being able to move around a lot. I do think you're going to see some of the Debo stuff with him. I think you're going to see some of those like Isaiah McKenzie things where, you just manufacture little jet passes to him where he gets a target or two just doing that. I think you could see him get handoffs in the backfield. I really do. I think he's going to be a very important player on this offense. And I just have a feeling that, while Keon Coleman could be, working his way in with a Claypool as like the big body guy, and Khalil Shakir could be fighting for time with, Curtis Samuel, but also if they put Dalton Kincaid in the big slot role again. And then, who knows what that means for when Marquez Valdez-Scantling comes in as a speed guy. And I just feel like when the dust settles, I think they're just going to nobody's going to be 100%, but I just think Curtis Samuel is going to be a hard guy for them to leave off the field. Plus, he hasn't been known as a deep threat, but he's a fast guy. Like he's a 4-3 guy. So he has that potential to take the top off the defense as well. I think this is the position, Stokes. I mean, this is an offensive episode, but holy cow, to me, the biggest story of training camp, maybe biggest 2, 3, 4 stories of training camp are going to be how do these receivers look? And did the Bills make a colossal mistake by getting rid of Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, and the fun the fun or misery of it is that we're not going to know the answer until we actually have the answer, because the realm of the range of possibilities is really endless. It could turn out to be fantastic, or it could turn out to be terrible, and we don't know until we're actually in it and we have the answer. And I think that's why the Bills are. That's why there's a question as to whether the Super Bowl window is closed or closing, is because there's that question mark where, I think that between Brady and McDermott and Bean, like they're tying their futures into being right about this, essentially, in my opinion.
And I will say this, there's a lot of the Super Bowl window is not closed. You have Josh Allen, you have a defense that under Sean McDermott every year has proven to be good, even when they have a gluttony of injuries. I think I just made that word up. They have proven to be good enough to get you through. This team is going to be in the playoffs. I firmly believe that. And I think when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback, you have a chance. I do think it's a faulty comparison to say, look at the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs last year won the Super Bowl despite having really bad wide receivers, one of which was brought in to play for the Bills. But the Chiefs also, when they had a chance this offseason to address the wide receiver position, they aggressively did so in the draft with Worthy. They aggressively did so in free agency with Hollywood Brown. So they will be the first ones to tell you that, yes, it's pretty cool. We got a Super Bowl win while also having, Tweedledee and Tweedledum at wide receiver. But let's get some playmakers out there and let's try to make this a three-peat. So I think the Chiefs will tell you that is not some sort of a blueprint for success, while also showing you if you have that dude at quarterback, he can go on a 4-game heater and take what is a mediocre regular season for the Chiefs standards and carry you to a Super Bowl. And that is exactly what happened. It does help when you have arguably the best defense in the sport, which the Chiefs did. But let's talk about a position group that could help out these wide receivers, Stokes, and that is the tight end position. Because last offseason, when the Bills drafted Dalton Kincaid in the first round, the talk all summer was, oh, watch out for this 12 personnel. Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez 2.0 and Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And then the season started and it was like, okay, can we just get Dalton Kincaid on the field? I don't know about Knox. And then Knox was dealing with a hand injury. I still think that Dalton Kincaid, to me, has a chance to be a star in this league. I think he just needs opportunity. There's nothing he can't do at the receiver position. I think Dawson Knox is slowly becoming like that Tremaine Edmonds kind of player where it's kind of cool to hate him, because right now he feels like a direct threat to a guy that we all universally love in Dalton Kincaid. Like Dawson Knox existing on this roster feels like the only way that Dalton Kincaid will not get 80% of the snaps, because Dawson Knox makes good money and they're going to want to get him on the field, yada, yada, yada. You know how it goes. But I do think there's a good football player there in Dawson Knox. Is he a top of the league tight end? No. We all hoped that he would develop into that when the Bills drafted him, and he looked like he was really ascending the first couple years, and he just hasn't done that. But I think he is a solid tight end in this league. He's a good inline blocker. He has very good athleticism. His hands are a little shaky. He's not a refined route runner, but I think there is still a path, Stokes, for that two tight end principle, maybe not to be the foundation of the offense, but to be a card this team can play. And I do think that this is as strong of a tight end group as I can remember the Bills having, dating back. I don't even know when it would date back to. It has to be probably the Kelly years to go back that far, where they've had two tight ends like this, because I know they had this group last year, but now it's year 2 of Kincaid. The Bills have not necessarily been the poster children for elite tight end play, by the way. There was a time when Charles Clay was like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? But I feel really good about where the tight end position is. You mix in Reggie Gilliam, who we talked about earlier. And, then you have the guys behind them like Quentin Morris, who I think could be a tight end too on a lot of teams. He's got some good athleticism. And then Zach Davidson and Trey McKitty round out the group. What are your thoughts on this tight end group? And anything I said about 12 personnel, just let me have it.
Yeah, I know that we, as we went into last season, we thought that we were going to see a lot of 12 personnel, and as we saw Kincaid be the type of player that he is, we slowly moved away from it, and as you pointed out, and we were like, hey, let's just let Dawson completely heal and see how this is going to go with Dalton, and I don't think it will be wise to just let Dalton Kincaid go out there and completely not use Dawson Knox, because he is still a tight end that is worthy of playing the position in this league, because he's a good tight end. There have been more than enough chances and opportunities that we've seen for him to flourish. He's had 2 big moments in different Chiefs games. Like he's still a guy that Josh Allen trusts. And when you're in this this sort of moment in time with this offense, you need more guys out there that Josh Allen is trusting of. But we all see it does look different when Dalton Kincaid catches the ball. It feels like when Dalton catches the ball, he is trying to deliver a hit to someone to make them remember that, hey, this guy had the ball. So the next time you see him with the ball, you're going to be a little bit more cautious in trying to tackle him. So that feels a little different. And for us watching, we want that guy to have the ball more, but I don't think it should be too much at the expense of Dawson Knox, because this tight end room is still good. And with the way Dalton Kincaid plays, there's a distinct possibility that he could be one of those guys that can get injured because he plays so physically, because he runs so hard, like he's trying to punish you, but at the same time he could be punishing himself if he just gets hit wrong. So I don't think it would be wise to phase Dawson Knox out of the offense because he is still a cog that is important to the guy pulling the trigger.
When they traded up for Dalton Kincaid last year, I think a lot of people thought, okay, we may not see it year one. Tight ends tend to be kind of slow to hit the ground running. And then Sam Laporta showed up and was like, yeah, okay, not really. And then Dalton Kincaid lost in all that, had a very good rookie year too. But to me, it's all about this year, especially with what the Bills have done at the wide receiver position. This to me is the referendum on that Dalton Kincaid trade up pick. He has to matter in a big way. And I think, Stokes, it would be somewhat surprising if this year comes and goes, barring a, oh my God, Khalil Shakir is a star, or holy cow, Keon Coleman came in, hit the ground running, and he's like T. Higgins 2.0. If Dalton Kincaid is not universally thought of as the best pass catching weapon on this team. That's how good I think he can be. And that's how important I think he needs to be. And I think it's on Joe Brady and it's on this entire offensive staff to find a way to make him that matchup problem that I think you and I both agree he can be. And then, yeah, the group after that, Knox, I wouldn't add anything to this group. I think it's just fine as is. I think if there was a situation where Kincaid and Knox both had to miss a game and Quentin Morris had to come in and play a game or two, I think the Bills would be probably just fine. I think he's shown good hands, had some clutch moments for the Bills. And I think he's a player that, in another situation on another team, maybe he could push to be like a tight end 2, maybe a tight end 1 on a really bad team, but that's neither here nor there. And then Zach Davidson is a guy that we've been hearing a lot about, really good athlete, but I'm not sure it's ever going to necessarily translate to NFL tight end. Last but not least, Stokes, the O-line. And let's break this up into 2 different conversations. At tackle, we have Deion Dawkins. We have Spencer Brown. Both of them are coming off the best seasons of their career. Spencer Brown is going into a very important contract year, and Deion Dawkins signed a contract extension this offseason that also helped clear up some cap. Last year's third tackle, Ryan Vandemark, is back, but the Bills went out and got some reinforcements. They brought in, I want to say, former first-round pick. He actually was a former undrafted player who was supposed to be a first-round pick, but then some really disturbing charges came out. He got cleared for the day of the draft. La'el Collins, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, is now a Buffalo Bill. And when you look under the hood of his deal, it certainly is a contract that tells you they expect him to be on this team. What do you think about the tackle depth on this team? I'm not overly excited about La'el Collins, but I do think as a guy that may have to come in and play, let's say a month. I think it's always good to have veteran experience there, especially because he can play inside as well. He was doing some of that at OTAs. Where are you at with this tackle group, Stokes?
I really like it. I like having four at each position that you can get out of a game with. Having Spencer Brown, who has had a history playing left tackle or right tackle, because when it comes to O-line, it really any single play could be them coming off the field because anyone can get rolled up on. Anyone can just there's just so much happening along offensive line that you just need that depth. And we've seen this Bills team where when the offensive line has a lack of depth and we're pulling guys off the street. Hey, can you protect Josh Allen? Because this is really important. And you got guys that don't really belong on some NFL rosters. They're just getting pushed back all day long. And when you think about the season that these tackles just had, it's probably, we probably should expect some regression because we can't expect that this entire O-line is going to gel the way it did last year. That's not consistent year over year. But having that depth to where some guys can get little knocks here and there, and you can have a guy that can replace them that has experience in the NFL, experience with this team, so on and so forth. So I really like the depth that the Bills have at tackle.
And what happens with Spencer Brown this year will be fascinating. The Bills could take one of 2 paths. They could try to extend him to a contract this offseason, or let the season play out. I am not in a rush to sign Spencer Brown to a contract extension. I do worry about players that have pre-existing back injuries. I'd like to see him do more than just 1 year of production. I'm okay with, I guess, rolling the dice. And if he has another really high-end year, let's say he makes a Pro Bowl, then maybe he prices himself out of Buffalo, or you're looking at a situation where you're paying Spencer Brown like $18 million a year. And it's a good problem to have. You have some great tackles. I don't know. But at this point in time, I'm not in a hurry to pay Spencer Brown. I'm totally comfortable with him playing out his contract. Let's talk about the interior, because this did get shaken up this offseason. Mitch Morse, the guy who has been the starting center for this team since 2019, is gone. The Bills released him. They have kicked last year's left guard, Connor McGovern, into center. He says that's his most natural position, which opened up a hole at left guard. And last year's sixth man backup interior, David Edwards, is going to fill in at left guard. We expect so anyway. He's definitely the front runner for that position. And then last year's second round pick, who had a very fantastic rookie year, played every snap for the Buffalo Bills, Osiris Torrance, is projected to be the starting right guard. Backing them up is a young player they have been very high on in Alec Anderson. And then they did draft a player this year in the 5th round, Cedric Van Pran Granger, who I think has a very outstanding chance to make this team. Some thought he could even go as high as day 2. I know Luca thought he could go as high as day 2. He's a very interesting prospect to add to the mix. Will Clapp is a guy that has fantastic name, has some starting experience, played for the Chargers, has some experience at center. I think he's a guy that, he may need some things to go his way in training camp at this point in time to make the squad. And then, we also have
Keaton Bill.
Keaton Bills. You want Bills to make the Bills, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. I would love for him to make the roster.
I guess I should have mentioned with tackle Travis Clayton. He's not going to factor in this year. He's on the international player pathway. He's going to be on the practice squad for, I believe, the next 2 years. Just a raw ball of clay, much like Tylen Grable, a raw ball of clay, who is a former Olympic wrestler. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. No, wait, I'm confusing him with Gable Stevenson. Too many Gables.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Gable Stevenson. But we'll talk about him next week. What do you think about this interior group, Stokes? To me, it comes down to, are they right about Connor McGovern switching to center? The offensive line was fine last year. Was it great? No. I don't think Connor McGovern was a great guard. I think he was an okay guard. I don't think Mitch Morse was a great center. I think he was a good center. Can Connor McGovern be a goodish center? And then David Edwards slides in and gives the Bills a little bit more power in the run game. There is a path there where you could say this offensive line could be better. It's hard to predict at this point in time. But what's your confidence level in this offensive line? They also let Ryan Bates go, and by let him go, I mean they traded him to Chicago for a 5th round pick. So where are you at with this team interior-wise on what they're going to be rolling out there as starters and the depth situation?
The fact that Osiris Torrance went out there and he held his own as a rookie, facing a lot of really top end interior defensive pressures, that can only work in his favor going forward in his career. When it comes to center, the most important things that we want the center to do is understand what the checks are, how to set the protections, and make the shotgun snaps. Like you don't notice a bad center or a center with the yips until he's making those bad snaps, and the quarterback has to change his level when he's taking a snap, or worry about where the ball's going to be when it's snapped, and that's when it can get really, really frantic. So if he feels this is his most comfortable position, I imagine over the offseason he's done thousands and thousands of shotgun snaps, which you would expect out of a guy who's going to be at center. It's really difficult to predict, as you mentioned, like how they're going to play, because they all have to gel and they have to work together and understand the protections. But you have guys that have experience that are. And that's all you really want. And you have guys behind them that they have youth, or what have you, when you want to, if you have to lean on them. When we drafted a guy who seemed to may have higher pedigree than where he was drafted. If he ends up out there, then maybe Osiris Torrance can take him under his wing. Say, hey, what couple of things that I noticed last year was this, and that. If he has to slide in and guard, and how it all works together. I think we'll see it mostly in the run game, how they're doing their double team and combo blocking and things of that nature. So I feel okay about it. I don't feel as comfortable as I do with the tackles, but I feel okay about the interior of the line.
So Stokes, of all the positions we've talked about tonight, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, offensive line, tackle, and interior, is there one position that you are worried about more than most?
Quarterback. No, I am totally kidding. Of
Hot
course.
take.
Yeah. Totally worried about number 17 out there.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really have a lot of worries as far as my only worry is that I just don't know how the offense is going to function, and that's exciting and also scary.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have to choose a position, I would probably say the interior line, because you're putting someone who hasn't been a center for a bit into play a crucial position at center. So that would be where my worry is. But if you have a guy that is confident in his ability to do it, then that's great. And obviously they didn't go out and make other arrangements to get other centers who are going to compete with him for the job. So they must trust that he's going to be able to do that at an effective level.
Yeah, you'd have to hope so, because letting Ryan Bates and Mitch Morse go in the same offseason is a huge show of confidence in Connor McGovern. And you're right. It's really, as far as like playing functionally, yeah, you need that, but you don't really notice it until the snaps start being bad. And for as much as they run shotgun, as much as that ball is slick in Buffalo, I can't even remember one bad snap from Mitch Morse in his time in Buffalo. So hopefully that's on point, and you have to trust the Bills there that it gets done. I trust Aaron Kromer as much as I trust any coach on this staff. I'm excited to see what happens with guys like Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandemark, who has been in the system for a couple years now. Where can they go? And then the jump we saw from guys like Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, the ability, like you mentioned, of Osiris Torrance to hit the ground running as a rookie last year. And then Connor McGovern to have his best year as a pro. I just feel like Aaron Kromer right now can do no wrong. So I'm assuming he signed off on these moves, and I will fully trust him with that. My concern is the receivers, but it's kind of like I'm like that guy in a work meeting that points out a problem but doesn't offer any solutions.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't have a solution for you. I don't think that, I can sit here and tell you go trade for Brandon Ayuk, go trade for T. Higgins. They're not going to do that. So I don't think bringing in a your name here free agent wide receiver is the move. There were times this offseason where you thought to yourself, maybe they could bring in Zay Jones. What would that really do? That's a guy to compete with Khalil Shakir. I don't know. At this point, I think they have a good mix of talent. I think they have a bunch of guys who all fill different roles. It's not like they have a bunch. It's not like the Giants last year, Stokes, where they had no good wide receivers, but then they brought in a bunch of 5'10" slot guys. And it was like, how is this going to work on game day? Like, you can see how the pieces of this core are going to mix. It's just a matter of who wins those jobs, and that'll be super exciting to see. And hopefully, no injuries along the way. All right, Stokes. Next time we are on the air, I assume it'll be with Luca, but we shall see. We will do the same exact thing on the defensive side of the ball. We have Bills training camp right around the corner, coming up at the end of July. Stokes, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm really excited about the season. I've missed the Buffalo Bills, and with the way last season ended, I just want to just get back at it, because I feel like the Bills are so close, and I need these guys to win it.
I do too. I need them to stop running into the Chiefs, but it sure felt like they were the better team last year until the game ended and they weren't.
Yeah.
Are you going to get college football, Stokes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about that. It's been a long wait. Very excited for that game.
What's your move in that game? Are you going to play the Ultimate Team mode? Do you already have some online dynasties lined up? Or are you just going to play online?
I've got a couple online dynasties lined up already that I'm gonna take part in, and then I'll just see how my free time looks to whether I'll add another one. But I haven't thought about Ultimate Team. I haven't really done any of the Ultimate Teams in any of the other games, but I know how addicting and fun it is. I take that back. I did FIFA Ultimate Team for a couple of years,
Mhm.
and it's really addicting. So I understand why EA makes so much money doing it because it is really fun to do.
And this is at the risk of this turning into like a full video game conversation. I will say one thing that they're doing in Madden this year and in NCAA, which is cool if you don't want to dabble in Ultimate Team, but don't necessarily have the time or like the group of friends to join an online franchise or online dynasty. They're making ranked kind of matter again. If you're used to NBA 2K or FIFA Online, what Madden and college football are doing is very similar to that, where you play 10 ranked games in a row. I don't know the exact number. It's like you play 10 in a row, you try to make the playoffs, and then you can level up to the next division. And there's actually like a reason to play outside of bragging rights and your record in a broken leaderboard. Like they've spent a lot of time revamping the leaderboard. I think college football is even going to have like a you win enough games, you make a playoff, and you play against somebody else who's won enough games. And Madden, it's going to be like leveling up to different divisions. So I'm happy as somebody who doesn't have time to join online franchises, doesn't have time or the endless resources it takes to keep up with Ultimate Team, that I can just plug in, use the Buffalo Bills or whatever team I'm feeling like using that night and actually play towards something other than the annoyance of some guy that's just celebrating nonstop on my screen. So that'll be fun to get into. All right, Stokes. Thanks again for filling in for Luca. And we will talk to you next time. And we will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.